You're listening to Don't IEP Alone with special education advocate Lisa Lightner. For more information about Lisa, the IEP Toolkit, and more ways we can help you in your process, go to adayinourshoes.com. Now back to the show with your host, Lisa.
Hello and good morning or good afternoon, whenever you're listening to this. This is Lisa Lightner from A Day in Our Shoes and Don't IEP Alone. Thank you so much for tuning into my simple little podcast about IEPs. So we are in the heat of the summer, the thick of it. Most people are in ESY. It's very hot out most places across the country, so just remember that if your child has special health needs due to temperature regulation, that your IEP team is aware. So last week, let me back up a little bit. Most of you already know I live in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania we had IEPs in special education starting in 1972. It was actually our framework that was used to help construct IDEA. We had this lawsuit in 1971 called Park versus PA, and Park stood for Pennsylvania Association of Retarded Children because that is what they were called then. There was, a settlement agreement of sorts, and there was this thing known as a federal decree. So there's this federal decree that says, okay, this is what you have to do. And in it was, all this special education stuff, allowing, disabled children into the schools and teaching them and providing an education. But it also established these quirky things that we have called intermediate units. And the intermediate unit is just that. It's an intermediate unit that is between or intermediary in between the State Department of Education and your local school district. Because of course at the time the school districts were like, well, hey, you're telling us we have to do all this special education stuff and we don't know how to do it. What do we know? Who's going to do all this stuff? So the Park Decree established these intermediate units, or IUs, which are, by and large, they were service providers. Now, in some areas, like in my county, they are still very large service providers. In other parts of the state, the IU has kind of whittled down what it does, and your home district is doing more of the service providing because, of course, people have evolved and now there's tools and training and education to do all this. Also, as part of this Park Decree was this thing called task forces, and I love this group, but I hate the name because they're called Right to Education State Task Force and Right to Education Local Task Force. Your local task force, there's one for every IU. Now, Pennsylvania has 67 counties, but we do only have 29 IUs. So that means there are only 29 task forces, right? Right to Education Local Task Force. Doesn't that sound like a fantastic organization that you want to get involved in? But because they are federally decreed, they actually have a lot of rights and responsibilities and a lot of clout if they're used properly as far as monitoring special education in your IU area, educating parents and things like that. All this to say that many years ago, I used to chair the task force for Chester County, and this coming year, I'm chairing it again with another mom. Her name's Tammy, because I'm old. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to say I don't want to do this anymore, but it's time to bring in parents of younger children. And Tammy has some elementary aged kids. Mine, of course, is almost 19. So, we're trying to engage younger parents to really revitalize and re-energize this group. the state has also recognized that we need to re-energize this group. And this is the reason that I love it, is that, by federal decree, your IU has to support this group financially and otherwise. So over the years, all these parents come to me and they go, oh, we should have a group. We should have a group. I wish we had a group. Let's form a group. And I'm like, no, we have a group. We have a group. But anyway, I was supposed to go to a conference last week. Not a conference, a workshop, a summit, something like that. Statewide, with the Bureau of Special Ed and leaders in special education from all over the state, people from every single IU and every task force, because the state wants to throw some energy behind these task forces and get them going again and get them more, you're supposed to have so many meetings a year, and we do, and then people don't even show up, and they complain about the time. We have it at a different time. They still don't show up. I've had some phenomenal guest speakers when I shared it before, and was really embarrassed when I'd bring in these fantastic guest speakers and nobody would show. But anyway, I could not go due to childcare issues. With our situation, you can't just call the teenager down the street and say, hey, can you watch my kid for a few hours? So I was unable to go, and I was disappointed, but, we're going to do a couple of Zoom calls with our local group and get caught up and get things going. But as it worked out, I was supposed to be out of town, and Tuesday, I got a text, I got an email, I got a Facebook message from Representative Houlihan, Chrissy Houlihan's office. She's my congresswoman. And they said, hey, do you want to meet and talk about Medicaid and how it's affecting your family and all that? Which it just worked out, because again, if I had been in Gettysburg at this conference, I wouldn't have been able to go. But as it turned out, I was home. My one takeaway from my meeting with her, because I did not go into this meeting hopeful that we're going to change anything, today or this week or this month on this budget bill, because the budget bill's been passed, it's been signed, passed by both houses, House and the Senate, signed by the president, it's in law. So I wasn't hopeful that we were going to change that. I just wanted to, again, show her, I think that Kevin needs to be seen. I think that people like him need to be seen as disabled adults who rely on HCBS services, and how these Medicaid cuts will affect people like him. So, that was my main reason of going. But also, I like to go to these meetings because I do information gathering myself. And I ask them questions. What can I help you promote? What's going on? What's the status of this? What's the status of that? So one of the things I asked her about was that I said, obviously this bill passed very closely. It was one vote in the Senate and one or two votes in the House. I forget. And I said to her, I don't understand how someone like Speaker Johnson, he's Speaker of the House, I said, I don't understand how a congressman like him can vote for this bill when about half of his district, and his district is in Louisiana, but I said about half of his district relies on Medicaid, and it makes no sense to me that he would vote for this bill. I mean, this is going to negatively impact half of his district. It sounds like political suicide, right? And she shrugged and mostly agreed with me and said, yeah, I don't really get it either. Even if it's not half your district, why would you want to harm any number of your constituents? It doesn't have to be half, but why would you want to harm any of your constituents just for the purposes of giving already very wealthy people more wealth? But she then said something to me interesting, and I want this to be the takeaway of this episode for those of you who are living in deep red districts, deep red states. You have deep red conservative legislators who you never agree with. Because she said to me that she's asked her fellow, representatives in Congress. And by the way, a lot of them are friendly to each other. Like the news likes to portray that like everybody's at each other's throats and they're constantly threatening each other and tweeting at each other and all that. And that's not true. It's a workplace like most other workplaces, and a lot of those folks, you're talking about 535 people in total, and a lot of those folks do get along despite being in different political parties. But she said that she has talked to them, and a lot of the folks said that no, they haven't heard from their constituents on this issue, and that no, their office isn't getting calls. No, their office isn't getting emails. And I know that when I've posted things on social media, when I've sent out emails about this, there have been comments, replies to my emails, things like that. And they go, oh, I live in so-and-so's district. It's why bother? Oh, my district is deep red. I'm not going to change anyone's mind. Why bother? And I understand that. And I can tell you that I am speaking from experience because you are listening to someone who spent many years talking to the offices of Senator Rick Santorum and Senator Pat Toomey. So I do understand what it is like. Oh, and Representative Smucker, Congressman Smucker. So I do understand what it's like to philosophically disagree with your people. But you can't please don't let that stop you from reaching out. We don't expect to change anyone's mind in one phone call, right? Nobody's mind, your mind, mine, nobody's opinion gets changed with one phone call or one email. It's an ongoing effort. It's having you call and then having your spouse call and then having your sister call and your, next door neighbor or your child's caregivers, grandparents, siblings, adult siblings, whoever it is. It's about calling and calling and calling. And over time, it does work. Even in the people who think they have these safe seats, because safe seats is no longer a thing in 2025. So it's going to be more important than ever that, a lot of times I think folks feel like a minority, but you may not be. And again, it's not about changing someone's mind with one phone call or one email. It's a sustained effort of, hey, here's my family, here's my kid, here's my concern, and you represent me. You work for me, and we need to remind them of that. So please, even if it feels hopeless, and again, I've spent many years calling Toomey's office, so I know what it feels like to call an office, and you're not going to change their mind, right? But they have to know over and over and over. And as you can see in some states like ours, it goes back and forth. It goes red, it goes blue. So anyway. Thanks for tuning in. I try to keep these short and bite-sized chunks, but that's all I'm going to talk about today. Please, go check out don'tiePalone.com. It's a new website that I just put up last week. Published it. It's the tools and training arm of A Day in Our Shoes. So keeping the Don't IEP Alone and the advocacy training resources on don'tiePalone.com. So definitely give that a quick look. Tell me what you think. I am going to be adding to it, but I did manage to get the basics up. Hey, listen, stay cool. Don't get overheated. And I hope you are enjoying your summer.
Thank you for listening to Don't IEP Alone with Special Education Advocate Lisa Lightner. We're so glad you've joined us and would love to connect with you outside of the show. For more information about Lisa, the IEP Toolkit, and more ways we can help you in your process, go to adayinourshoes.com. From self-care tips to common IEP mistakes, there's even more to explore. Don't forget to rate and review the podcast and subscribe to never miss an episode. Until next time, don't IEP alone, and you don't have to.